Coming up on Mornings on the Hill, we've got the full breakdown on local races and what they mean for Central New Yorkers.
And the most contested races in the country, who will take the House and the Senate controlling Congress. We'll have more.
And how long does TikTok have in the U.S.? Its time may be cut short.
All that plus your orange weather and sports coming up on Mornings on the Hill.
Good morning. I'm Sydney Staples. Thanks for joining us for Mornings on the Hill.
And I'm Micah Prine Goldstein. Let's get right to our top story. And there's no questioning just what it is this morning.
Our top story this hour is on who is winning the elections in the state of New York right now.
Jeremy Lynch joins us live in studio with the latest on a couple close races. Jeremy.
Yesterday was an important day in America. People went to the polls and exercised their right to vote. Leading off, Republican candidate Brandon Williams is leading the New York 22nd Congressional District race over Democratic candidate Francis Knoll. As of right now, it is too close to declare a winner. Williams has 131,613 votes, which is approximately 50.6%, and Knoll has 49.4% of the vote, which is about 128,393 votes. Next up, history was made this year. Syracuse University alumna and incumbent governor Kathy Hochul is projected to win the governor race in New York State. Hochul has over 3 million votes, which is 52.7% of the vote. Hochul is the first woman to be elected governor in New York State. She is projected to beat Republican Lee Zeldin, who has 2.7 million votes, which is 47.3% of the vote. Stay tuned for later in the show. Zach Richter will be interviewing a special guest to break down these results. Reporting live from in studio, I'm Jeremy Lynch for Mornings on the Hill.
Both candidates for New York's 22nd Congressional District, Francis Knoll and Brandon Williams, have promoted their military backgrounds. Mornings on the Hill reporter Michael Villegas spoke to local veterans to get their thoughts.
Both of New York's 22nd Congressional District candidates, Francis Knoll and Brandon Williams, served in the Navy and have played it up during the campaign. With Veterans Day coming up, local veterans are thinking about who to support on Election Day.
Veterans who have served the country have a real sense of what needs to be done.
Dr. Rick Wright, retired captain in the United States Navy, expresses his concern with the lack of veteran representation in Washington, D.C.
We have people in Congress who have never been in the military, and they are controlling the purse strings. But how in God's creation can you control the purse strings of people who need something and you've never been involved in the situation that they're in?
With Brandon Williams and Francis Knoll both serving in the military, active duty and veterans say not only their issues separate them, but their jobs and responsibilities while they were serving.
Between two veterans, I think it goes into like what they represent and then what they've been through. Because as a veteran, you can kind of look at what their career history was. That could play into their role for future politics. That can actually contribute to who I like more.
Having served their country has benefited current members of Congress who are assigned to committees dealing with military, veteran, and homeland security issues. Either way, a veteran will be serving the 22nd Congressional District after November 8th. For Mornings on the Hill, I'm Michael Villegas.
Jayla and Michael, thank you. Now, this election has been a historic one in many ways. In New Hampshire, James Rosner becomes the first transgender man to serve in the House, and governorships are also becoming more inclusive.
That's right. Projected winner Wes Moore would be the first black governor of Maryland, and Sarah Huckabee Sanders could become the first woman to serve as governor of Kansas. Plus, Laura Healey could become the first lesbian governor of Massachusetts.
Well, it took some time getting here, but it sure feels colder this morning.
Absolutely, Sydney. I know that it's on the way, but I can really feel it. As Jon Snow likes to say, winter is coming. So on that note, our Jayla Pettis joins us now to give us the first look at the weather. Jayla.
Thanks, guys. Walking to the newsroom this morning, it was rather chilly, and I can tell that winter is approaching and is here. It's currently 42 degrees, and the National Hurricane Center says tropical storm conditions are spreading across the east coast of Florida as of this morning. Officials say Tropical Storm Nicole's wind gusts are around 70 miles per hour, and warnings have been issued for Florida and the Georgia and South Carolina coasts. Now, let's take a look at the weather for today. It's currently 42 degrees, but it feels 33. And it's chilly, really cold outside, and snow is expected for next week. I'll have a look more at the 5-day forecast later on in the show. Live from Newhouse Patio, Jayla Pettis for Mornings on the Hill.
Talks of a potential TikTok ban from the App Store has made headlines recently. Mornings on the Hill, Isabel Flores joins us now in studio to tell us how this may be influenced by politics and what this means for small business owners.
Thanks, Sydney. A few weeks ago, FCC Commissioner Brendan Carr brought up the idea of banning TikTok from the App Store again. Carr was appointed by former President Donald Trump, who was also against the platform. Nothing is set in stone, but if the ban does go through, small businesses could be hit hard. Last week's FCC meeting sent people into a frenzy concerning TikTok bans again after the idea was first brought up during the Trump administration. Meg Craig is a general manager of Syracuse University's Orange Television Network and is a professor in several Newhouse departments. Craig broke down how talks of banning TikTok from the App Store is connected to politics.
TikTok is heavily focused on a younger audience, and that audience may overwhelmingly not hold the same ideals as, for example, a right-wing political group might.
While some individuals are afraid that TikTok is harming the community, others are using it to bring it together. Sarah Samiel, owner of the Curd Nerd Cheese Shop, has amassed more than 96,000 followers on TikTok by creating content that educates viewers on all sorts of cheesy topics.
I like creating content because I get people who come in and they know just a little bit more than they would have if they hadn't watched my videos. They know now a flavor profile or where it's made, how it's made, the cheese making style.
Samiel says if the app were to be banned, small businesses would suffer, even saying she'd probably be forced to shut down since about half of her customers found her shop through TikTok.
So it's not just like my business that it's helping, it helps my community, it helps our community as a city, and I really think banning it would absolutely destroy a lot of small businesses.
Samiel says making content people enjoy makes her feel closer to her community and hopes that her community becomes closer through her shop. The argument used by conservatives is that the app is used as spyware by China. Still, many believe this is just part of the agenda to remove an app that, for the most part, holds liberal ideas. For Mornings on the Hill, I'm Isabel Flores.
Thanks, Isabel. Syracuse University is making history today. Former Goldman Sachs Jennery Scruggs will be the first person of color to serve as the chair of the SU Board of Trustees. The board decisions on major education goals and fiscal policies. He was voted in unanimously. Chancellor Kent Severud is saying he's passionate about equity and opportunity in higher education, as well as accountability and delivering on promises. Scruggs will take office in May of 2023. Just ahead, you have probably seen them on your TV or phone. Campaign ads have taken over, and we have more on why they help candidates.
Plus, political correspondent Matthew Kibbe joins us live in studio to tell us what we need to know about the election. Welcome back to Mornings on the Hill. Let's take a look at today's weather.
Jayla Pettis joins us now in studio. And Jayla, we hear there may be some snow in the forecast?
Yes, that's right. It's a 50% chance of snow on Sunday leading into Monday morning. Now let's take a look at the temperature for today. It is a high of 31, a low of 28. And as you can see, the record high is 77, but it's not 77. It was rather cold this morning walking into the newsroom. And then the record low, 17 degrees. Now let's take a look at the regional temperatures. Syracuse is at 60, Fulton 59, Glens Falls 50, and Watertown 58, Rochester 63, and Buffalo 60, around the same temperature as Syracuse. Now let's take a look at the hourly forecast. As you can see, it is 50, it will be at 1 p.m. It'll increase to 60 at 5 and then dip down to the lower 40s in the a.m. and then heading into the afternoon, 68, and then by tomorrow morning, 54 degrees at 3 a.m. Now I look at the 5-day forecast. As you can see, Micah and Cindy, back to you.
Reporter Isabel Flores went out to the polls yesterday to learn why voters were heading to the polls. When Flores visited the Solvay Fire Department, she discovered just how important voting is for some people living in Onondaga County.
Today's chilly weather didn't stop Syracuse voters from coming out to the Solvay Fire Department even at 6 in the morning. Many residents were eager to get to the polls to have their voices heard. Syracuse resident Jim Gasick says he wants to use his voting power to create change.
I voted today because I'm very disappointed in what we have in government right now. Every vote counts, and what we have in office right now is tyranny in my eyes.
Carla Silva Gardner also believes that voting can help to foster change in one's community.
I, for a while, was a canvasser myself for a bunch of different political causes, so I really strongly do believe it all starts with small movements, and that's how you lead to bigger change.
Trent Gardner says that being able to vote in the United States is a privilege and makes him feel empowered.
It's one of our fundamental rights in this country that a lot of other countries don't have.
While residents all have different views, one sentiment that seems to be echoed by many is to go out to the polls and vote.
Go vote.
Go vote.
As we got closer to Election Day, the amount of political ads seemed to just grow and grow. Mornings on the Hill reporter Elena Lucido tells us just how those political ads can impact people's votes.
We see political ads everywhere, but just how effective are they? Sydney Staples and I spoke with a previous candidate and a campaign manager to find out more about the effectiveness of these ads.
You see the political signs with their names, and you may see the candidates show up at your house. Community engagement specialist says familiarity is what makes the difference.
Studies have shown that name recognition matters, but at a local level, people vote for who they know.
While Andrea Wandersee thinks signs and door-to-door tactics are the most effective, the Vice Chair of Onondaga County's Young Republicans, Liam O'Connor, thinks attack ads are a good strategy.
In the current political climate, people are very cynical about American politics, so they're going to tend to be more receptive and believe a negative message almost more than a positive message.
O'Connor says political ads attacking both first-time candidates hurt their efforts to build positive name identification for themselves. But Wandersee does not think they are helpful.
It's a way of avoiding what you stand for. I'd rather hear about what somebody stands for than tearing down somebody else. Even though I just ran at the local level, I was really careful to not criticize my opponent. When you're doing a local election, you're dealing with your neighbors.
Republican Brandon Williams and Democrat Francis Knoll are running for Congress in a district that includes the city of Syracuse and other towns in Onondaga County. O'Connor wants voters to remember the outcome in this race is important and could impact control of the House. And to keep in mind,
these are not personal attacks, these are policy attacks. And at the end of the day, people need to know who's making the crime situation worse, who's making inflation worse.
Those attack ads will end when the polls open on November 8th, and then the final say will come down to the voters.
The most important thing, especially the younger generation, is get yourselves out there and vote and put that cynicism behind you that your vote doesn't matter, because it totally does, especially at the local level.
Thanks, Elena. Our election coverage continues this morning with a deeper analysis on all the results from last night and some we are still waiting for.
And our Zach Richter has a special guest today. Matthew Kibbe joins our Morning on the Hills reporter Zach Richter with some insights into those results. Zach.
Good morning, guys, and right now I have Kibbe joining us this morning, Matthew Kibbe, and we're going to talk a lot about the races and all the results that happened last night. The first thing I want to start with is the 22 New York State Congressional District, which we still do not have a result from Francis Knoll and Brandon Williams.
Yeah, Brandon Williams has claimed victory in the New York 22, but in my personal opinion, that race is still too close to call, with some votes still needing to be straggled, and there's about 6% of the vote left out there, which is enough to swing for Francis Knoll. But Brandon Williams right now is Republican likely right now for that New York 22 district.
You know, we were telling earlier, we reported that's 94% reported, but there's still, we can't report it as MOTH. There's no other network that has reported it at this hour. We'll obviously update you as more information becomes available. Now, moving over to Kathy Hochul. She has now become the first female elected governor ever in New York State history. That's big.
Yeah, it's a really big deal for women in democracy as well. When you look at it as well, she's also the first governor in 100 years from upstate New York. Every one of the other governors in the past 100 years has been from New York City. So this is a really big deal for upstaters, especially with the Micron deal that just happened. We thought Lee Zeldin had a good chance of maybe coming back. We saw a lot of those attack ads that we saw earlier in the show that had an impact on voting. But in the long run, this state, New York, is blue, and it stayed blue for Governor Hochul.
So Hochul obviously was governor this year, but now when she becomes governor again in January for her next term, this time she will be elected. So one of the biggest things on the ballot was Proposal 1. Now let's take a look at this because this was big as New York state voters voted for this yesterday, and it said that basically it was a $4.2 billion state bonds thing, and it authorized environmental protection, natural restoration, resiliency, and clean energy projects. Tell me more about this, Kibby.
Yeah, formally this was a proposal proposed by former Governor Andrew Cuomo, but when COVID hit, they ended up taking it off the ballot. So Kathy Hochul ended up reinstating this onto the ballot this year. It did pass, and it passed favorably, which is actually a very surprising considering how much of a budget it's going to pertain. $4.2 billion is a lot. It's going to affect towns like Conquest, New York, who's currently in talks with the state about putting a solar farm into their town. A lot of mixed emotions about this, especially in the farming communities where a lot of that land is going to be used for stuff like wind turbines, solar panels, and other means. Another big issue with this Proposal 1 is coming into water filters. And Skaneateles Lake, as most people know, is the water source for Syracuse, New York. It's one of the only lakes that supply this amount of people filter-free. So there's a chance that we could see a filter going into Skaneateles Lake now.
Kibby, thank you so much for joining us. Mornings on the Hill and NCC News will update you with any further information on that Knoll-Williams race as it becomes available. For now, Micah, Sydney, I'll send it back over to you guys.
Zach and Matthew, thank you. The parent company of Facebook is laying off thousands of employees.
Meta is cutting 13% of their workforce, which totals to about 11,000 people. This is coming after Twitter's mass layoff last week. Mark Zuckerberg says the pandemic and a decrease in revenue is to blame. One less place to get your Starbucks fix in Syracuse, with yet another location formally closing for good.
The location at Armory Square closed their doors on Sunday, joining the Starbucks location on Marshall Street, which closed over the summer. The company has claimed safety issues were to blame, but a Starbucks labor organizer disagrees. Jazz Brysack told reporters that both stores closed due to unionization efforts by employees.
Coming up on Mornings on the Hill, football lost to Pittsburgh, but men's soccer is playing in the ACC semis this evening.
Maddie Muschin and Michael Villegas walk us through an update on Orange Sports. Don't change the channel.
Good morning, I'm Maddie Muschin, here to update you on what you may have missed in Syracuse sports. It was a packed few days of wins for the Orange, starting with volleyball and men's soccer, both winning on Sunday. Both women's and men's basketball competed in the Dome in their first regular season games this year. The women's played Stony Brook first and beat them 79-56. Deja Fair led the Orange with 18 points, followed by Tisha Hyman with 16. After a close win over Lemoyne last week, the team seems to be finding their identity on the court. Following that game, the men took on Lehigh. Led by returners Joe Girard and Jesse Edwards, the Orange pulled out a 90-72 win. JG3 had 19 points and made 4 of his 6 3-point attempts. Edwards had 18 points and 11 rebounds, which helped clinch the Orange's first regular season win. The women's take on Colgate tomorrow night at the Dome at 7 p.m. and after that, the football game's last home game of the year takes place on Saturday. Morning on the Hill reporter Michael Villegas is in the studio this morning to preview Syracuse's matchup against Florida State. Michael?
Thanks, Maddie. Syracuse football has a tough matchup this week going against a Florida State team that is coming off a dominant performance against the University of Miami. FSU scored 6 total touchdowns and had over 400 yards on offense while holding the Hurricanes to only a field goal the entire game and would win 45-3. Syracuse head coach Dieter Baber spoke at Monday's press conference and addressed the challenge ahead this week for the Orange.
Offense is clicking. They are absolutely on fire. They've done some amazing things in a year. Defensively, they've got defensive linemen and defensive ends, and it's an exceptional defense. When you take Miami's athletes and you hold them and they don't get a touchdown, it's telling you what we're dealing with right here. It's going to be a tall task, but we got them at home, and that's the best place to get people when you have tall tasks. And we're going to see how it goes, but we know that it's a difficult game. We know our opponent is really good, and we'll be there at 8 o'clock.
This Saturday is the last home game of the season. The Orange are 5-1 in the Dome, and Coach Babers asks fans to be the 12th man and come out and support the seniors as they play their last game in front of Otto's Army. Following the game, the traditional senior walk will take place as they take their final lap around the JMA Wireless Dome. Be sure to pack the Dome this Saturday as the Orange take on Florida State with a kickoff for 8 p.m. For Mornings on the Hill, I'm Michael Villegas. Maddie, back to you.
You can come out tonight to the SU Soccer Stadium as the men's soccer team competes in the ACC semifinals against Virginia. The tickets are free for all SU students with a valid ID. Sydney, Micah, back to you.
Still to come here on Mornings on the Hill, Sammy St. Jean will talk to our sports anchor who doubles as Taylor Swift's biggest fan.
Plus, St. Jean shows us how our crew's favorite foods are for the holiday season. That story and more just ahead.
Hi guys, I'm Sammy St. Jean, your entertainment reporter today, and I'm alongside Maddie Mushton. You saw her a little earlier in the show, doubling as your, Taylor Swift's biggest fan, as Sydney mentioned. The Combustion Mushton here to talk a little Taylor Swift, the New Era Tour. And can you just tell me a little bit about your excitement for this tour?
I mean, I love Taylor Swift ever since her first album. And I have seen her in concert once when I think I was about 14, so I'm excited for her to come back on tour after the pandemic and everything.
All right, so obviously she's been on tour before. Can you tell me a little bit about what makes this tour so unique?
I think since that she's done all of her re-records and she's come out with 3 albums since her last tour, I think everyone's kind of just excited to see her back on stage, especially since she's kind of taken on a new persona as Taylor.
Okay, so this is the big question. Next Tuesday is the big day. I thought it was yesterday, but it's next week. Pre-registration, how does that go for you as far as that?
So through Ticketmaster, you have to go on and sign up to get pre-sale. So you have to pre-register to get pre-sale, which is a little bit confusing, but I already pre-registered, all my sisters pre-registered, and my friend actually got bumped up to get further in line for pre-sale. We didn't get that, but I think that next Monday, if we get that email, fingers crossed that we get pre-sale tickets, then we'll get those.
All right, perfect. Now we're going to move on to a fun segment that we have to do with Thanksgiving and Christmas approaching. Took a little time to ask our Mornings on the Hill their favorite foods for the holiday season. And first, Maddie, we didn't ask you for the segment. What's your favorite holiday food?
I think probably stuffing or ham.
Personally, mine is mashed potatoes. Can't go wrong. But here is everybody else's favorites.
I'd have to say my favorite holiday food is my mom's sweet potato casserole. She makes it very good, puts marshmallows on it, and then maybe like a honey baked ham or turkey. Those are my favorite probably for both Thanksgiving and Christmas. But
chicken. But okay, actually probably mashed potatoes. Can never go wrong.
I like collard greens and macaroni and cheese.
It's going to be sweet potato casserole. My mother's sweet potato casserole is delicious, and then ham. I really like ham as well.
Easily mashed potatoes with gravy and cranberry sauce, no doubt. The cranberry sauce with the gravy, everything mixed together, perfection.
My favorite holiday food would have to be candied yams with marshmallows.
Honestly, any dessert from Christmas or mashed potatoes or deviled eggs, because usually those are a holiday food for me.
My specific favorite holiday food is my grandma's mashed potatoes. They have chive, cream cheese in it. So good.
Okay, there's a lot of food in the holiday